Hey, what's up guys? In this video, my husband Phil and I are going to try and respray the bed liner on our 2015 Toyota Tundra using the affordable Raptor DIY bed liner spray kit. Now, this kit only cost us $150, so let's see if it's worth the money. Now, we bought this truck used about a year ago, and one of the things that has been on our list pretty much since we bought it was to try and work on making this truck bed look a little bit better. Now, the previous owners had sprayed some sort of liner in the bed already, but I'm pretty sure that they did zero prep work beforehand. More on that later. So needless to say, our goal here is not to have a flawless finish, but more to prevent further chipping of that old bed liner and just overall make it look a little bit nicer. So let's see what we can do. To get started, I use the pressure washer to clean the bed really good and help break up any loose pieces from that old bed liner. Once it was mostly dry, we could move on to the next step, arguably the worst step, which was grinding and sanding down the truck bed. Now, believe it or not, Phil actually volunteered to do this step so that I didn't have to, which was incredibly generous, but probably also incredibly regrettable once he realized just how much this step sucked. Now, typically when spraying this bed liner stuff, you simply need to sand the bed to rough up the metal for the spray to adhere to. But in our case, we were sort of trying to smooth out the areas that were really chipped up as much as possible. After he would spend some time grinding the bed, I would then come behind with the sander to try and smooth it out some. And then, rinse and repeat. So this step did take quite a bit longer because we really wanted to try and blend those areas as much as we could so that they would be less visible when we resprayed the bed. So this was actually a 2-day process because there was only so much of that we could withstand doing in the middle of August. It's a good thing neither one of us has a problem with putting a little sweat equity into a project. And let me tell you, this project, it was full of it. Now, I didn't show it, but we also sanded the side walls of the truck bed before spraying. These walls were actually in pretty decent shape compared to everything else, but we did make sure to rough them up as well. By the end of it, we were both looking a little more like coal miners than we would like to, so that meant the next step would be removing all of that black dust and getting the bed as clean as possible before it was time to spray. Once all of the sanding was done, I sprayed everything down really good with a degreaser and then took a little brush and wiped the entire truck bed down. I'm pretty confident that this truck bed has not been this clean for a long time. Next, I took some painter's tape and plastic sheeting and covered up any areas that I didn't want to get spray on. Not gonna lie, this step took a long time. It's kind of like doing basically any paint project where you spend hours prepping to paint, only to spend a few minutes actually painting. Makes sense why Phil gave me this job because he doesn't have the patience for something like this. He lives by the it's good enough philosophy, which kind of seems to match up with the previous owner's mentality after witnessing how much overspray was already all over the truck before I had even sprayed a single drop. Oh boy. Next, we went ahead and took the tailgate off the truck so that it was a little easier to tape off the rest of the truck. And after all that prep work, it was finally time to spray. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we're using this Raptor protective coating spray, and this is everything that comes in that $150 kit. It even includes the spray gun for spraying. Now, the first step was to mix the hardener into my first bottle. We just mixed these up as we needed them rather than all at once. I mixed 8 ounces of hardener into my first bottle, and they recommended to shake it for 2 minutes. So I thought I'd test out my cocktail shaking skills in case I ever needed to become a bartender. It was fun for the first 30 seconds, and then I got tired and had Phil shake it up for the remaining minute and 30 seconds. Next, we had to get this spray gun hooked up to an air compressor. Now, they recommend to use an air compressor that's at least 6 horsepower, but we decided to completely ignore that to save money. So we just borrowed this 1 horsepower one from my dad, which I can confirm did work, but let's just say it taught us a lesson in patience. Now, I did go out and buy this little pressure regulator for it so that we could keep the pressure right at around 50 psi to prevent any surges in pressure that might lead to too much spray coming out of the gun at once. Now, because we were using this little baby air compressor, that meant that I could only spray in small sections, and then I'd have to let the compressor build up more pressure to spray another section. So, I'd say that it only took about 4 times as long, but who's counting? Once I finished spraying the first coat, we let it sit for an hour and then came back to spray the second coat. Just make sure to take the spray gun out of the bottle from the first coat or you might have a hard time removing it, like we did. Ultimately, for our truck bed, the first coat required 2 full bottles and the second coat took maybe 1.5 bottles. Once I finished spraying the second coat, then we went ahead and removed all of the tape and plastic right away. It's our understanding that if you leave it on until it's fully dry, then it will be much more difficult to take off. With all of the tape removed, we put the bed cover back on temporarily just to help keep it dry. I think they recommend not to get it wet for like 3 days after spraying. Let's just refresh our memories a little bit so we can remember how incredibly rough this bed liner looked at the start of this project. Nothing short of an eyesore in my opinion. But with $150, a lot of sweat equity, and a boatload of patience, we no longer have to be embarrassed by this truck bed. Sure, it might not be the most flawless spray and bed liner that you've ever seen. I mean, given what we started with, it was never going to be perfect. There's still a couple of visible dents and uneven areas that were there when we bought this truck. I mean, we could only conceal those so much. But does it look much less like a hot mess than it did before? I don't even think it's a question. This looks so much better. We are extremely satisfied with the results and would absolutely recommend this Raptor bed liner for anyone that's wanting to add a bed liner to your truck on a budget. I hope you guys enjoyed watching us tackle this project together. It's something that's been on our to-do list forever, and it feels nice to finally check it off. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you for my next project. Bye.